They say love blinds you. But for women, love doesn't blind, it magnifies. It makes you see more, feel more, believe more. You don't fall in love with the wrong person because you're foolish. You fall because your heart was made to see potential, to sense softness even in broken things. You fall because your nature is to nurture, and sometimes, that nurturing turns into self. Women are taught to romanticize endurance. You're praised for forgiving, admired for your patience, celebrated for sticking around. So, when love starts hurting, you tell yourself it's just a phase, that all relationships are hard, that maybe it's you who needs to try harder. You confuse effort with devotion. You call emotional labor love. And slowly, quietly, you start carrying what was never meant to be yours. But here's the paradox, the part that shakes your understanding of love to its core. You don't fall in love with the wrong person because you're broken. You fall because you're human. The same heart that craves connection is the one that misreads chaos for chemistry. The same eyes that once saw red flags see them as fireworks when you re lonely enough. The same woman who swears she knows better finds herself checking her phone at midnight, rewriting messages, trying not to sound too needy. You tell yourself he's just complicated, misunderstood, guarded. You think his silence means depth, his distance means mystery, his inconsistency means he's scared of love. And when you catch a glimpse of the tenderness you fell for, it feels like proof that your patience is working, that maybe love is enough to fix what's broken. But what if it's not about him at all? What if it is about you and the reflection he has been holding up to your soul? Because every wrong person you've loved has mirrored something unhealed within you. The fear of being abandoned, the longing to be seen, the belief that love must be earned to be kept. These are ranty flaws. They re-emotional echoes from the places inside you that still ache to be chosen. And that's the quiet truth most women never realize. Sometimes, the wrong love appears so magnetic because it resonates with your old wounds. You're not addicted to the person, you're addicted to the feeling of almost being enough. But here's where you unknowingly start to lose yourself when you try to prove your worth through their love. When you start to believe that if you give a little more, stay a little longer, forgive one more time, they'll finally see your value. You start fighting for love when all you ever deserved was peace. Still, there's a kind of beauty in this pain. Because every time your heart breaks, it's not collapsing, it's awakening. It's showing you what you no longer want to accept, what you can no longer ignore. And beneath that ache, something inside you begins to whisper, there's more than this. You deserve more than this. That's the beginning of your power when you stop asking, why did he do this to me? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? Because loving the wrong person isn't a curse, it's an initiation. A passage through which you discover your boundaries, your worth, and your capacity to heal. It's the raw, unfiltered reminder that love was never meant to hurt this much. And once you understand the truth behind why you fall for those who can meet you, you'll never settle for less again. You'll start seeing love not as something you chase, but something that meets you where you are. So let's begin there with a story that might sound uncomfortably familiar. The moment where love feels real, but starts to slip through your fingers. It's a quiet evening, the kind that feels heavier than silence itself. The world outside moves as usual, but inside the parked car, time has stopped. A woman sits there, hands trembling slightly, phone glowing in the dark. The screen shows one message, I just need some space. She reads it over and over, as if somewhere between the lines, she'll find the version of him she thought she knew. The one who laughed with her in the kitchen, who kissed her forehead like she was home, who promised he wasn't going anywhere. But promises fade fast when someone decides they need space. Space from you. Women know this scene all too well. The waiting, the bargaining, the quiet panic dressed up as patience. You tell yourself not to overthink, not to text again, not to care too much, but you do care. You care with a depth that aches. You care even when caring makes you small. You tell yourself he just needs time, that he's going through something, that maybe you asked for too much, spoke too soon, expected too deeply. But beneath those gentle lies is a truth your heart already knows. You're shrinking again. Bit by bit, you've been dimming your own light so he wouldn't feel blinded by it. You've been making yourself easier to love by making yourself quieter to hear. You remember the first time you noticed the shift, when his messages grew shorter, when his warmth began to cool. You felt it, didn't you? That instinctive drop in your stomach, that unspoken knowing that something was changing. But instead of pulling back, you leaned in. You tried harder. You smiled through the ache. Because that's what women are taught to do, to hold on, to nurture, to fix. Maybe that woman is you. Maybe it's your friend. Or maybe it's every woman who has ever mistaken emotional labor for love. Every woman who believed she could love a man into wholeness, even if it meant breaking herself in the process. Because love, when it turns wrong, doesn't feel like rejection. It feels like withdrawal. You're not missing him. You're missing the feeling of being wanted. You're missing the adrenaline of uncertainty, the comfort of his attention, the illusion of being chosen. You tell yourself you can't let go because it still feels real. But what you're really holding on to is hope. And hope, when tied to someone who's already slipping away, becomes a quiet form of self-abandonment. But here's where you unknowingly start to lose yourself, when your heart becomes a waiting room. when you start timing your worth by the space between his replies, when your reflection in the mirror starts to look like someone who's waiting to be loved instead of someone who already is. You don't want to admit it, but you've built a home and almost seen, almost chosen, almost enough. And in that space, you forget that love isn't supposed to feel like trying to solve a mystery you were never meant to understand. You know this isn't right. You feel it in your bones. That quiet tug that whispers, this shouldn't hurt this much. But even then, a part of you can't stop hoping. Because for you, love has never just been about being chosen. It's been about proving that you're worthy of being kept. And that's the cruel trick of almost love. It keeps you chasing closure in places that only ever gave you confusion. It keeps you rewriting your worth through the lens of someone else's indecision. But somewhere in that ache between knowing and hoping, something deeper begins to awaken. It's the quiet moment when you finally see that what you've been calling love might actually be a reflection of what you've been taught to settle for. And that moment, that fragile space between holding on and letting go, is where the truth begins to reveal itself. The truth about why we fall for those who cannot meet us, and what that pattern is trying to show you. Women often believe they're choosing love with their hearts, but in truth, most of us are choosing love with our history. You don't just fall for a person, you fall into a pattern, a rhythm your body already knows. An emotional language you learned long before you ever knew what romance was. Every woman carries a blueprint, an invisible script written by her earliest experiences of love. For some, love was safe, steady, predictable. For others, love meant proving something. Proving you were worthy of being held. Proving you could be good enough to stay. Maybe it was a parent who loved you, but only when you were easy. Maybe it was affection that appeared and disappeared depending on how quiet, helpful, or understanding you were. Without realizing it, those early lessons became your definition of connection. So when you meet someone who gives just enough to keep you hoping, you don't recognize the danger. You recognize the pattern. And familiarity, even when it hurts, can feel like safety. Because at least it's something you know how to survive. You don't chase unavailable people because you enjoy pain. You chase them because your body remembers the dance, the longing, the chase for crumbs of attention. That's the hidden truth. Attraction isn't always chemistry. Sometimes, it's recognition. Your nervous system scanning a new face and whispering, this feels familiar. And so, you mistake that familiarity for love. His inconsistency doesn't register as a red flag. It registers as home. The emotional highs and lows, the waiting, the mixed signals, they mirror the emotional rhythm you once lived through. It's the same uncertainty, wrapped in adult language. The same ache that says, if I can make him stay, maybe I'll finally prove I'm enough. But here's where you unknowingly start to lose yourself, when your body confuses tension for connection. When unpredictability feels more exciting than peace. When you start mistaking anxiety for passion and calmness for boredom. You tell yourself you crave depth, but what you're recraving is resolution, an end to the same emotional story that has been looping for years. And here's the thing, your heart isn't broken, it's repeating what it knows. Trying to rewrite the ending it never got. That's why you attract the same kind of man in different bodies, emotionally distant, inconsistent, half-in. Because your subconscious is hoping that this time, love will finally stay. That this time, the ending will change. But love doesn't heal repetition. Awareness does. The moment you see the pattern, you interrupt it. The moment you realize, I'm not crazy, I'm conditioned, something inside you softens. You stop blaming yourself for choosing wrong and start understanding why you did. And from that understanding, something powerful happens. You begin to separate love from survival. Because love is not meant to feel like holding your breath. It's not supposed to feel like waiting for someone to remember you. Love, real love, is steady, it's kind, it's peace, not panic. But if chaos is all you've known, peace will feel uncomfortable at first, almost foreign. That's not a sign to run, that's a sign you're healing. And when you finally stop chasing what's familiar and start choosing what's healthy, your entire emotional world shifts. The same energy you used to spend fixing others begins to rebuild you. You stop asking for crumbs and start expecting consistency. You stop over-explaining and start listening to your intuition, the one that always knew the truth. Because the truth is this, you were never unworthy of love. You were just following a map that wasn't drawn by you. But now, you can rewrite it with boundaries, with awareness, with softness that no longer needs to beg to be seen. And yet, even with this awareness, most women still fall back into the same emotional cycles, not because they're blind, but because they're being quietly triggered by forces they can't yet name. 3 subtle psychological patterns that pull you right back toward the very kind of love you're retrying to escape. Women often wonder, why do I keep ending up in the same kind of love? The faces change, the names change, but the emotional pattern remains hauntingly familiar. It's not because you're doomed or unworthy. It's because there are 3 invisible threads, 3 psychological triggers, quietly weaving themselves into the way you love. And until you see them, you'll keep mistaking pain for passion and effort for love. Let's start with the first one. The savior complex. You're drawn to men who need healing, the ones who are distant, conflicted, or emotionally unavailable. Something in you feels called to help them, to understand them, to stay when others wouldn't. And it feels noble, doesn't it? Like your compassion is proof of your strength. But deep down, this isn't just empathy, it's familiarity. You once learned that love is something you earn by fixing, soothing, or saving. Maybe as a child, love came when you were quiet, helpful, or selfless. You learned that being loved meant being useful. So now, when you meet someone broken, it activates that old instinct. If I can heal him, he'll love me. But love built on rescue isn't love. It's a contract of survival. You end up pouring your warmth into someone else's wounds until you have nothing left for your own. And when he finally pulls away, when your healing can fill his void, you don't feel angry, you feel not enough. But the truth is, you were never meant to save him. You were meant to see yourself. Then comes the second trap, the scarcity illusion. You start believing there's a shortage of love in the world. You tell yourself, good men are rare, or maybe this is as good as it gets. You hold on to half love because the fear of being alone feels heavier than the pain of staying. So you convince yourself that the few crumbs he gives are a sign of potential. That if you wait long enough, he'll change. But here's where you unknowingly start to lose yourself when you let fear decide who you love. You mistake familiarity for compatibility and scarcity for destiny. The fear of loneliness becomes louder than the voice of self-worth, and before you realize it, you're no longer choosing love, you're choosing not to be abandoned. Because somewhere inside you still believe that being chosen, even halfway, is better than being alone. But that's not love, beautiful one. That's survival dressed as devotion. And then, there's the third pattern, perhaps the most seductive of them all. The familiar chaos. You've mistaken intensity for intimacy. The thrill of the chase, the emotional highs and lows, the dizzying unpredictability, it all feels electric, doesn't it? Like proof that the connection is real. But what you're feeling isn't passion. It's dysregulation. It's your nervous system mistaking adrenaline for love, because that's what love once felt like. Peace feels foreign, almost boring. But chaos feels alive. It keeps you waiting, hoping, analyzing, and apologizing. It keeps you believing that maybe this time it'll finally stabilize. Yet every time it doesn't, you blame yourself instead of the pattern. And so, the cycle continues. You heal someone until you're empty. You hold on because you're afraid to start over. You chase intensity because calm feels too quiet. Each of these patterns feeds the next, until your love becomes unconditional, but their effort never is. And the world doesn't make it easier. Society tells you to fight for love. Movies romanticize the chase. The songs glorify the pain. Women are taught endurance, not boundaries. We grow up thinking that love is proven by how much we can suffer for it. But real love, healthy love, doesn't demand your suffering, it invites your peace. And yet, beneath these patterns, beneath this emotional conditioning, there lies something even deeper. A truth most women never question, because it challenges everything we've been taught about love itself. Because what if the real reason you fall for the wrong person isn't about them at all, but about the fantasy you build around their potential? Here's the part that hurts, not because it's cruel, but because it's true. You didn't fall in love with him. You fell in love with his potential. Women do this more often than we realize. We see not just who a man is, but who he could be, if only he healed, if only he tried, if only he finally recognized the depth of what you were offering. You saw his wounds, his struggles, his moments of tenderness, and you thought, if he could just get through this, he'd be everything. And so, you loved him not for what he gave, but for what you believed he might one day become. That version of him, the one in your imagination, became your emotional home, a place you visited every time reality disappointed you. Every small gesture, every brief moment of affection, every apology or promise, it was like a spark. It reignited your hope. That was your dopamine hit. Because, deep down, you weren't addicted to the man. You were addicted to the hope. Hope that one day he'd meet you halfway. Hope that your patience, your loyalty, your softness would inspire him to grow. Hope that your love could finally be the thing that saves him. But here's where you unknowingly start to lose yourself, when your hope starts costing you your peace. When the fantasy version of him becomes more real in your heart than the man standing in front of you. You start negotiating with yourself. Maybe I'm asking too much. Maybe this is just how love is. Maybe I just need to be more understanding. But love, real, healthy love, is not a project. It's not a reward you earn through endurance or emotional labor. Love isn't meant to be a rescue mission. It's meant to be a meeting of equals, to people who choose to rise together, not one woman lowering herself to lift another person up. You keep waiting for potential to become reality, but it doesn't. And it's not because you weren't enough. It's because potential isn't a person. It's a promise without a plan. The truth is, you can't build a relationship on who someone might be. You can only build one with who they are right now. And when you finally see that, when you realize that the man you fell for exists more in your imagination than in your life, it shatters you. It feels like mourning a love that never fully existed. You grieve not the person, but the story you wrote around him, the story where he healed, where he grew, where you both finally got it right. But as the illusion fades, something sacred begins to happen. You start seeing yourself again. You start realizing that your ability to believe in someone else's growth wasn't your weakness, it was your gift. You just gave it to the wrong place. And that awareness, that clarity becomes your liberation. Because when you stop being addicted to potential, you reclaim your power to choose reality. Women start asking different questions. Not can he change, but do I feel safe with him now? Not will he love me better someday, but is he capable of loving me well today? And that's where your healing begins, not in fixing him, but in freeing yourself. Because the truth is, love doesn't need to be earned through patience or pain. It's not meant to keep you waiting on promises that never arrive. Love, real love, meets you in the present moment, not in potential. And once you see that clearly, once you stop chasing what could be, you begin to touch something far more powerful, the quiet, unshakable strength of emotional self-mastery. Here's how you begin to break free, not by hardening, but by coming home to yourself. For too long, women have been taught that love is sacrifice, that patience is proof of worthiness, that endurance is the price of devotion. But real love, the kind that nourishes instead of depletes, doesn't demand you to shrink. It invites you to stay whole, and that begins with redefining what love truly means. Love isn't about how much you can give, fix, or tolerate. It's about how safe you feel being your full self. Loud, quiet, emotional, strong, everything in between. If love costs you your peace, it's not love, it's conditioning. It's the echo of an old pattern whispering, if I try harder, they'll stay. But real love doesn't make you earn it, it lets you rest in it. It feels like calm, not confusion. Because love isn't proven by how much you endure. It's reflected in how freely you can be yourself without fear of losing someone. Then, there's the deeper healing, reconnecting with your inner child. That small, tender part of you who once believed love meant being good enough to deserve attention. She still lives within you, waiting for you to finally notice her. The part that still flinches when someone withdraws, that still wants to chase when someone pulls away, that's not your weakness. That's your younger self, trying to get the love she once needed. So instead of judging her, hold her. Tell her she's safe now, that she doesn't have to perform anymore. Let you become the one who finally stays, the one who gives her the reassurance she has been seeking in everyone else. And when you learn to comfort yourself instead of chasing comfort from others, everything begins to shift. You stop chasing love and start attracting alignment. That's where emotional detachment comes in. Not detachment in the cold sense, but in the clear sense. You start observing your emotions instead of drowning in them. You learn that feeling deeply doesn't mean losing control. You can love someone and still recognize when it's not healthy. You can care and still walk away. That's power, the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't scream or chase, but chooses peace over chaos. And then, you raise your standard. Not out of bitterness, but out of reverence for your own heart. You begin to understand that you deserve more than almost you deserve effort that matches your energy. Words that align with actions. Presence that doesn't vanish when things get real. Because when you finally stop settling for crumbs, you make space for the feast you've always deserved. And here is the truth. When women collectively start choosing differently, when we stop romanticizing pain and start prioritizing peace, the world shifts. The love stories we tell begin to change. We stop glorifying the struggle and start celebrating self-respect. We stop chasing the broken and start embodying wholeness. It's not just a personal healing, it's a cultural revolution, one that begins quietly, in moments when you say no more to what hurts and yes to what honors your soul. Because the end of loving the wrong person isn't just the end of a relationship, it's the beginning of finally loving yourself, right? And that is the most powerful love story you'll ever live. Because once you learn to love yourself in a way that feels like peace, you'll never again mistake chaos for connection, and that's where true freedom begins. Maybe loving the wrong person wasn't a mistake after all. Maybe it was a mirror, one that reflected everything you had forgotten about yourself. Your capacity to give, your depth, your hope, your softness, even your resilience. Women often carry their heartbreaks like proof of failure, as if choosing wrong means they were naive, as if caring deeply means they were weak. But what if it was never about failure? What if it was about awakening? Because every heartbreak, every silent night, every tear you tried to hide was an initiation, a passage into your own becoming. You thought you were losing someone else, but in truth you were being guided back to yourself. You see, you were never unlovable, you were just misdirected. You were never too much, you were just with someone too small to hold your depth. And that's what loving the wrong person does. It stretches you. It cracks open the parts of you that were asleep. It teaches you where your boundaries live. It reveals how far you've wandered from your own worth, and it brings you home. Because love, real love, isn't supposed to drain you. It's supposed to meet you. It's not meant to feel like walking on eggshells, waiting for crumbs, or proving your value through pain. It's meant to feel like exhaling, like finally being safe in your own skin, beside someone who doesn't make you question if you're enough. But here's the truth, most women miss. The lesson isn't about him, it's about you. The way you silenced your intuition when it whispered this isn't love. The way you stayed, hoping your compassion would inspire change. The way you believed that love had to hurt before it healed. You didn't fail by loving deeply, you simply forgot to love yourself just as fiercely. So now, as you walk away, not in bitterness but in clarity, don't close your heart, refine it. Let it become wiser, calmer, more discerning. Let it choose not from fear of being alone, but from peace in being whole. You will love again, but next time, it will be different. You'll recognize the difference between chemistry and connection, between intensity and intimacy, between attention and intention. You'll know when someone sees you and when they only see what they can take from you, and you won't have to chase. You won't have to prove. You won't have to beg someone to stay. Because now, you'll be anchored in yourself. That's the beauty of heartbreak when you let it teach you. It doesn't just end a chapter, it rewrites your story. It turns pain into wisdom and longing into strength. It softens you, but it also sharpens your boundaries. It reminds you that losing someone who couldn't love you right isn't the end. It's the clearing for something better, truer, and real. So no, you didn't love wrong. You loved bravely. You loved fully. You loved with a heart that believed, and that's sacred. But now, you get to love differently. You get to love right. Because the woman who finally understands why she loved the wrong person becomes the woman who will never again confuse pain for passion or loneliness for love. She becomes the woman who loves from fullness, not from fear. The woman who doesn't need saving because she's already found herself. And that woman is you.